we discovered a massive need for women to find an identity surrounding being a woman and an entrepreneur. I'm Marley.
And I'm Rachel. Women like us, women who are the primary earners in our families,
are searching for identity, community, visibility, permission.
A place to be heard and supported.
We are leading with our vulnerability to allow others to feel safe.
We are strong
and feminine. We are bread-winning women. Welcome to this week's episode of Breadwinning Women TV. This week, okay, are we going to get a little emotional? It might get a little emotional. It might get a little bit deep, dramatic, little girly. Rachel and I, over the last, I want to say week, but also like it's really a lifetime of patterns of things that happen in friendships and ambition and just life, that sometimes you come across people that you think have your best interest and they surprise you. But should we be surprised? Is this something that just, is this life? So Rachel and I over the last couple of weeks have noticed, people in our life and a little change of pace when our lifestyles change. And we talked about this in a previous episode where we talked about, Rachel, you said that you are quick to trust. And I said that I can be the opposite. And I wonder if that has changed for you now, Rachel.
Ooh, it's a really good question, because one of the things that's interesting is my husband is by nature, Paul is a pessimist, and he calls himself a realist, but I think he's pessimistic, probably because I'm optimistic. And so, he's definitely taught me a lot about being more careful. But one of the things that's really interesting, even beyond what we've learned over the last few weeks with friendships and with relationships, is I think the idea of, when I'm building a business, can I have friends who aren't entrepreneurs? Can people who don't, work 60 hours a week, are they ever going to understand it? Am I always going to experience like shame that comes from friendships that don't support my business? There's so many different things that come up. But the reality is I don't want to change how I am. And last night, Paul and I had this awesome conversation. We were talking about just that. And he said, you know what I love? I love that you believe the best in people. And I thought that was a really good point. It's part of who I am and I can't change it. And I don't want it to change, What about you, Marley?
Well, and that's what can make it so much more disappointing when people do let you down, is because you do think the best of people and you give them the opportunity to show their best selves. And just in general in life, we expect people to react or respond or just act the same way that we would, because we just assume that, well, that's the world that I live in. Why doesn't everyone else live in that same world? So when they respond differently or they make a different action or decision or opinion or judgment that doesn't align with ours, it makes us go, wait, what? I thought, what aren't you in this world too? But everyone has different upbringings, different perceptions. And so I'll tell what happened to me recently. And Rachel, I think that anyone listening to this, anyone watching this, please comment below if you can relate to this, when you went on a different path or you were immersed in something that you were passionate about and the people around you might not have understood that. And we love our friends who are entrepreneurs and the people who are not entrepreneurs. There's no judgment about someone being better or different, but we also just don't want the judgment towards us for being passionate about something. So the other day, I was on Facebook and I was messaging someone who their wedding was coming up, and I messaged them or I wanted to look at their Facebook page to see their wedding pictures, and found that I was not on their friends list anymore. And I was really just surprised by that. What happened? And I was gone on Instagram as well. And I reached out and said, like, hey, what happened? And I appreciated that they were very honest with me and said, I don't like seeing your stuff. We started our businesses at the same time and you have grown beyond us and we feel like you don't need us anymore and that you've left us in the dust. And I was really surprised by that, because I've tried to reach out. I've tried to, hey, join this group, or do you want to go to this conference with me? Or just, and I was really surprised by that. And they said, maybe we can try being friends again in a few months. And I just said, you know what? I'm not comfortable being in a relationship and in a friendship where I have to worry and walk on eggshells that my growth, my success is going to offend you. So thank you for being honest with me. But I see that we're taking different paths and it hurts. And that is not the only situation that has ever happened in my life where someone didn't support my growth, my trajectory. They took it personally when I grew and didn't think it. And the funny thing is, doesn't everyone say that they want to be surrounded by positive people? They want to be surrounded by successful people, but yet what happens when someone in your group becomes successful? Where does the competition come in? Like, why does that have to happen? So for me, it was a bit of a disappointment, but also just a message to me to reaffirm that I just got to keep doing me and keep focusing on the people that I'm serving. And there's no way that I'm going to play small to make someone else feel better.
Absolutely. Now, I've got some feedback coming in. Is the second window open? Maybe that was it? There we go. That was it. Perfect. So whatever that was perfect. So the interesting thing is that was coming from friends who were not entrepreneurs, correct?
They were, and then they decided to shut down their business, which I wasn't a part of that. I'm not sure what happened, but like they were at first starting a business and then at some point stopped.
Interesting. You know, one of the things that I've experienced as well was similar, but I just remember this one friend kept always making comments. She'd always say, "You're getting too big for me. You're getting too big for me." Yet I found that in the relationship, I was the one who was always reaching out. I was the one who was trying to set up get-togethers, who was trying to call and the phone wasn't being answered. And she would always say, "You're getting too big for me. You're getting too big for me." And all of a sudden I realized it wasn't that I was deciding that I was too big. It was that she had decided that she wanted to play smaller, and that me deciding to go big and deciding to go for the massive dreams that I had was too much for her to handle. So if you kind of just change the emphasis of what she was saying, it was actually true. It was getting too big for her to handle. But one of the interesting things that people ask me about a lot is people who are not entrepreneurs. My story with my friend and your story with your friends, they were entrepreneurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what about friends who aren't entrepreneurs, people who are able to go to a 9 to 5 and check out at 5 p.m. and not think about their work on the weekends, or people who are able to just, live with the security of a paycheck and live in a normal lifestyle without the entrepreneur pace? What do you think about that, Marley?
It's so funny because there's I feel like both sides can envy each other in a way, and both sides can also not envy each other in a way, because there's pros and cons to both, and there's no judgments on which one is better. Or like, I don't look down on people that have a 9 to 5 because I've decided to own my own business. There are times where I'm like, dang it, I wish that I could just quit everything and just get a paycheck instead of having to worry about expenses and payroll and staff and like all this stuff. And then I'm sure that there's the other side that says, I wish that I had freedom and flexibility and the ability to work from home. Of course, there's like the grass is greener. But then when it comes to like communication, and I absolutely have to take a step back and look at how I'm showing up for my friends that aren't entrepreneurs, that I'm not trying to impose anything on them, that I'm not trying to brag or show off anything. And I'm also just trying to love them for who they are and where they're at, and not try to, influence anything for me or on my end. But there can be a misunderstanding of, why do you want to work so much? Why are you on your phone? Why are you always talking about these things? And I can completely see where that's an area where I need to improve so that I show up as a better friend. But then there's also for me, a concern about being judged for the things that I love. Whereas I wouldn't judge a friend who couldn't come out on a weekday because they had to go to their 9 to 5 job the next day, and I might not have to wake up that early. So I just, I want that mutual respect. What do you think, Rachel?
One of the things that comes to mind is when I went through the journey of sobriety, I think it was about 4 years ago. And one of the assumptions I had was that everyone around me was going to also have to quit drinking. And that's what everyone says, like, your spouse needs to stop drinking. You can't have alcohol in the house. And for my experience, at least, that wasn't the case. Like, I can still have friends who drink, and I can be around people who drink, and it doesn't affect me because I know what my beliefs are and I know what my life holds. I know that that's not good for me, and it may not be bad for someone else. Just because it's not something that helps me doesn't mean it's not awesome for someone else. So I think about people who are, for example, fitness experts. They're obsessed with fitness. They love fitness and healthy eating and weight loss and all of that. You would never say, I can't be friends with someone who likes Taco Bell, because it's like, that's
How unfortunate.
right. And obviously, even if it's a huge part of your life, the reality is you wouldn't say, no, someone can't be my friend because they like Taco Bell. You would just say, I'm glad you like Taco Bell. Thank you so much for inviting me. I don't eat Taco Bell, but I'm glad that you like it. Like, that sounds great. And I've really found the same to be true with friendships and entrepreneurship. Like, when I meet people who work in a 9-to-5, I'm never going to be like, oh, I can't be your friend because you're not an entrepreneur. But rather, I'm going to say, this is what I found, and this works for me, and this is why I'm super happy. And I have awesome advice that I could give you if you're up for it, but I'm also not going to push it on them either. And so I personally found that entrepreneurs should and can have friends who are non-entrepreneurs. It's definitely easier to find commonalities with other entrepreneurs, but when you have friends who aren't, it almost kind of grounds you a little bit, because sometimes entrepreneurship can feel like this insane roller coaster without a seatbelt. You're just like hanging on, and suddenly you don't remember. Yeah, you don't remember where the ground is. You're like, what is the sky? The sky could be green today if I decided. Entrepreneurship defies so much that sometimes it's just wonderful to get together with people who aren't as obsessed about work, and to kind of dive into some other topics and things that have to do with everyday life. I personally found it to be really helpful.
To get away from being immersed and, being obsessed, being driven by our businesses. But at the same time, it removes us from that so that we can remember, oh, the business is fueling my lifestyle, not controlling my life. And I agree with what you're saying. Like, there's nothing, we're not looking at people in a 9-to-5 and going, oh, the peasants, the muggles. Like, I would never give up my relationships just because someone didn't own a business. It's a lifestyle choice. It's like, my friends could be a cat person. I'm not a cat person. That doesn't make me go, oh, we can't be friends.
Right. Another great way to think of it as well, though, is that it is a two-way relationship. So while you say, I want to still be friends with someone, even if their lifestyle is totally different, they're not an entrepreneur, they're not always thinking about work in their business, they also have to make the decision to continue that friendship. It has to be coming from both sides. Otherwise, there's a weird push-pull and a guilt and a shame. And where all that stems from is a lot more complex than just one simple layer. The reality is, yes, you can absolutely be friends with people who are not entrepreneurs, but they also have to support you just like you're going to support them in not being an entrepreneur.
There can be a lot of insecurities when people change, and you hear that a lot, like people, movies, TV, like, you've changed. Well, not necessarily. And hey, change is good. People are growing. That's a good thing. So it's not really fair to accuse someone of changing. It's, heck yes, I've changed. I'm growing. Want to jump on? If you don't, then okay, maybe this is where we part ways. Something that my sister-in-law was talking to me about recently was like how you can have a job description for friendships. And that doesn't, I don't want to make it sound like you treat your friends like employees, but like, let's imagine that you have an employee. This is someone that you have chosen to be on your team in your life, and they have roles that they fulfill. They are your backbone. They support you. They fulfill a position to fulfill you in your life. And that's kind of the same thing with friendships. Like, for me, a job description is they support me, they care for me, they back me up even when I'm wrong, or they point out when I'm wrong so that I can get that, but in a friendly, respectful way. You and I have done it for each other. But if there ever comes a time where like they're dropping the ball in the friendship, or they're doing things that actually aren't in your best interest, or they're, blatantly doing things to upset you, that like, if you wouldn't keep that person as an employee part on your team, do you keep them as a friendship, as a part of your team of people in your life?
I love that. I think that's honestly one of the best ways you can think about it. And obviously, like, no friend is ever going to be perfect, but there are definitely different roles. For example, like you and I have found each other as like soulmate best friends, which is great and wonderful, you know? And that means that we meet duties in each other's lives that no one else does. We're going to
Yeah.
have the tough conversations. We're going to hold each other accountable. Just like you said, we're going to be there for our children's births and everything, you know, as she's already been. But one of the
Yeah.
is when you have those solid friends that meet the descriptions of what you're looking for in friendships, suddenly you're not expecting as much of everyone else. You know, I remember, like, for me, finding Paul, it gave me a huge level of stability. Like, it was the next level of stability in my life, and it gave me a foundation that allowed me to go further with friendships, because now I had this person who met the role that I needed, and I wasn't looking to friendships to meet a need that I had that Paul was supposed to fill. So I found that having those is really, really helpful.
And understanding the roles that you want your friendships to fulfill, and whether they're entrepreneur friends or non-entrepreneur friends, like, there's still the level of, respect and love and care for each other. And if there's something that goes outside of that, like, what are also your non-negotiables for friendships? Like, we kind of do that when we're thinking of, bringing on a partner or a spouse. Like, what are the non-negotiables I need in a partnership? It should also be the same for friendships. And I'll also hear from people that they have family members in their lives that they might be toxic or just a really negative relationship, but they feel obligated to maintain that relationship because it's family. And that's really, really hard to give you advice on, because every family is different. But I would just say, like, you want to surround yourself by good people. And I have people that I love at a distance, if that's what's best for me.
Absolutely. And one of the things that it comes down to is deciding what parts of your life to let different people into. You know, for example, there are certain things in my business that can at times feel very, very vulnerable, and not many people know them. You know, my husband, maybe a couple of my team members, my accountant, whatever it is that the situation is. I don't need to share that with all of my friends. I don't need to share that with everyone I come into contact with. And instead, segmenting people based on what areas of your life are safe to share with them can be super helpful.
Mm-hmm. And even because sometimes, even when you share the good things that could be exciting, sometimes sharing those with people that aren't on that path can interpret it the wrong way. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying, hey, this is something that's really exciting. But if there's an insecurity, or even if just they're not on that path and don't understand, it can come off the wrong way. So something that I've even just decided for myself is having those people, my lifers, that I can tell everything to. And that circle is very small. It's like you, Paul, and Wayne.
I like that circle. And I'm excited because that circle is being reunited tomorrow when you come to Minnesota.
I'm so excited.
We're going to have so much fun. So I think
we're going to do the next episode of Breadwinning Women in person.
And my hair will finally be done.
Yay.
So much fun. I think this is really helpful. And I think this is going to be, I think some people are going to say, I have some ahas about my friends who are entrepreneurs or my friends who aren't entrepreneurs, how to handle and navigate those friendships. I think it's going to be really, really helpful for some people.
Yeah. The biggest takeaway for me, and it's been a pattern in my life of, and we talked about this again in a previous episode, where, like, you go through cycles in your life and there could be good things happening. And when you grow, sometimes you're leaving people and things and circumstances behind, because when you're moving to a next level, who does future Marley still hold on to past Marley? Like, I'm growing. That's a good thing. Change is good. And if there are people that might be offended because of my forward growth, those are people that aren't willing to take that path with me. So it's like, come, like, you're either in or you're in the way. And I say that with so much love, and I don't mean for that to sound like a judgment, but just for anyone that's listening to this, if you have someone that is offended or insulted or insecure because of your growth, and you feel a temptation to play small because of that, I want you to just think of how what that's costing you, who you are doing a disservice to by not stepping fully into your power and to who you're meant to be, because the pain of the judgments is minor compared to the pain of not going towards your calling.
I love that so much. And then also recognizing that you can have friends who aren't on the same entrepreneurship journey as you are, but maybe the friendship looks a little different. Maybe the topics of convo are different. Just as if you were a fitness expert, you wouldn't sit and have a conversation about Taco Bell with your friends who love Taco Bell. You would find other commonalities, and that's going to be the focus of your friendship. And you're going to trust them into those parts of your life that they're going to understand, and not try to bring them into the parts that they don't understand and don't care about. So I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. So if you're listening, if you're watching, please comment below. If you're listening to the podcast or watching this on YouTube on breadwinningwomentv.com, comment below, and we'd love to support you with your entrepreneurial journey, which also means the community you're surrounded by. And what better community for you female entrepreneurs than Breadwinning Women? So come join us on our Facebook page, on Instagram, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to Breadwinning Women TV, and we will be back next week in person. See you next week.
See you later.